The second of 5 videos on party policies will cover international diplomacy and international relations. The main focus will be a more peaceful diplomatic solution to issues around the world. The current situations in many countries around, particularly the Middle East, but also other areas as well, where previous generations have interfered and resulted in ongoing conflicts, successively one after another, is something that continuing that same pattern of behaviour wouldn't actually resolve, at least not any time in the foreseeable future. What we would need is a different approach, effectively, and one such as not invading and conquering all of these places and forcing them to follow what we want them to do may possibly be the way forwards. It has been a policy for a long time in this country to allow manufacturing businesses to sell weapons and similar to countries around the world that we don't necessarily want to have weapons, countries that we would consider maybe not our direct enemies but certainly potential future adversaries. We allow this obviously because it generates profit for those businesses, it pays workers in this country, it pays tax and so on. That's something that I would be looking to restrict somewhat. But more so, I'd be looking towards just a more peaceful diplomatic solution to the problems, which would result in hopefully more stable governments in all of these locations around the world that would not be constantly fighting each other. Obviously that's not going to happen overnight, but not repeating the mistakes of previous governments of simply invading, declaring war, defeating people, and saying we have won at considerable expense in terms of both finance and loss of life. There are definitely better ways of resolving issues than that. In addition, there is also the question of foreign aid money and our support to third world nations, particularly countries in Africa, South America, parts of Asia. For decades now we have been told these countries need our money in order to be able to feed themselves, in order to not starve, in order to not die from preventable diseases, and so on. And so for decades now we have been supplying them with money and food in order to keep them alive year after year. And the situation has barely changed in that time. They are still saying we need money for food, decades on. Effectively the system we have in place is not only making them reliant on our providing charitable donations to keep them fed, it's also not actually solving the inherent problems that are causing that in the first place. What we would need is more of some sort of an investment in the areas that would allow them to generate their own sustainable economy that would continue making its own money subsequently. It may be that that would cost more upfront, but it would be in the long term not just a saving, but also it would save many needless deaths. It would save many people from growing up in very difficult situations. It would overall be more beneficial to those countries. Of course, that's not going to happen at the moment, not least because we rely on Africa and South America and Asia for a supply of cheap raw materials, exotic foods, metal and other minerals and so on, that we can import and use for manufacture at a low price because they are coming from countries that can pay significantly lower wages to their workers. If we were to invest in the economic growth and the infrastructure, the education and healthcare and so on in these countries, it would result in them not only running their own businesses under their own terms, rather than being assets within businesses based in Europe, North America and China. It would mean that they would be expecting higher earnings and more other benefits as well that would ultimately cost our businesses more. So those areas are continually maintained in a state of needing money in order to survive. And that's of course without the issue that whenever we as a country send money towards supporting these areas, we are effectively giving it to the governments of those countries. We have no guarantee that they would use it for what we want them to use it for. There have been many, many reports of governments receiving foreign aid money and spending it on expensive cars and mansions and so on for the government's top staff, or using it to bribe people into voting for them, or to force their residents to submit to certain rules and restrictions and so on. They give the money only to the religions or ethnic groups that they support, or they restrict the flow of foreign aid to areas that are not submitting to their particular rules. We are effectively, unwillingly, but through a lack of sufficient oversight, we are supporting these governments in their inappropriate actions. Other forms of support and investment, aside from simply giving them money, would be significantly more beneficial. There's also the question of whether we can use our position in the global economy to push certain countries towards social policies that we would find more acceptable. The fact that many countries around the world continue to enforce laws restricting equal rights and freedom of speech, freedom of expression and so on that we consider to be basic human rights, and we are continuing to work with those countries as though nothing were happening. There is a definite possibility that we could say to those countries that if you continue acting in this way, we will have to somewhat restrict our relationship with you in some manner. An artificial limiting of international trade, increase in import tax rates, things like that would just slightly nudge those countries towards maybe adopting more acceptable forms of behaviour. Ideally, I'd like us to help move things forward towards a more peaceful, democratic future around the world, but that's a huge aim and something that's not realistically possible for us to do from here for people the other side of the world, at least not without a huge amount of support from virtually every country in the world.